Wife confesses to cheating on her husband with a stripper right before their wedding, then blames him for their divorce 15 years later. Guys, welcome back to Alpha Talk. So for today, I'm going to share an article titled, "I cheated on my husband a week before we got married, and now we're divorced." And guys, this story is written by a woman, obviously, and she tells the story about how 1 week before she got married, she was at a bachelorette party, obviously for her, and she got trashed. There were, obviously, male dancers there, and ultimately, she ended up cheating on the guy she was going to get married to. And to be a little more specific, she was doing a little, smoked sausage tasting, but nevertheless, got married to the guy anyway. And 15 years later, it comes up somehow, and you're going to see and hear about the whole downward spiral, what happened with their relationship and their marriage after that. And here's the crazy part. You're going to see that she makes him out to be the bad guy. She's the one that cheated. She's the one that lied about it, the whole 9 yards, and ultimately, he is the bad guy here, and the reason that their marriage tanked. Okay, so I'm doing this, guys, for a bunch of reasons. One, because obviously it's entertaining, but also to show you just how, a lot of times, women could be in the wrong, and how some of these women will just twist things around to make them out to be the victim, and the guy that they wronged, because she wronged this guy, out to be the bad guy. It's crazy, you know? And also another reason to show you that this stereotype about these types of actions going on at bachelorette parties do happen, okay? It's not just some story that may happen every great once in a while. So it does happen, okay? So I'm going to go over this story. Guys, it's a little long, but it's definitely worth listening to. And she definitely has a flair for the dramatic, let me tell you, in telling the story here. So it starts off, thwack. I slammed the garage door so hard it shook our wedding photos hanging on the wall behind me. I silently see down the hall to our bedroom where I could blow off some steam. What? He wants a break to pursue other relationships? After everything we've been through, who the F does he think he is? Ross Keller. What husband says that to his wife of 15 years? What the actual F? So this is her freaking out, a quote of her freaking out when he obviously finds out what happens and he says, "Hey, I want to open a relationship now. Clearly, we have bigger fish to fry than that one time I sucked a stripper's. As you know what? For 15 seconds at my bachelorette party, 15 years ago. She knows it was 15 seconds. Somebody actually set the timer and they're watched in time. That thing going on for 15 seconds. I'm coming back to this story a year and a half later. I'm still disgusted, but for a much different reason than the second time around." And she says, there's a little quote here, says, "The catalyst to all this was my husband's honesty. It's effed up how it all unraveled. I'm effed up for not telling him the truth before we got married. I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to leave me, the kids, and me 14 years later." And this is her. That was a quote from her writing an article about this story a year earlier. You're going to find out here, guys, this woman writes blogs and stories, and ultimately, after telling her husband this, she wrote this story for the whole world to hear about, okay? And there's no way that she doesn't have friends that know about this, about her writings also. Now, if it wasn't bad enough that the husband obviously found it, that 15 years earlier, she did what she did before the wedding, didn't tell him the details about what happened, and now, all these years, he finds out. But she had to write an article about this. And people obviously that he knows her and knows him is going to know. Real nice, but still, you're going to see she's a victim and he's the bad guy. Oh God, the amount of blood, the amount level of toxic fog, fear, obligation, and guilt seeping through my computer screen as I reread my story made me cringe. And then the puke showed shortly after that. Today is the day where I take full responsibility, more healthily than I did the first time, tell you unapologetically what really happened behind closed doors, and to let that go first. To go back and thank everyone who read, commented, sent me private notes, and supported me through the revelation of one of the raw stories I've ever told on here. So like I said, she writes a lot of blogs, lots of articles, so obviously, there's been other stories going on there that she writes. Okay. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind with why, in my opinion, leads the husband down the path that he does. What I will take responsibility for. Oh good, I can't wait to hear this. I was 22 years old, about to marry the first guy I had ever slept with, and drunker than a skunk swimming in a barrel of whiskey. I was bursting with unexplored sexuality and got caught up in the moment. Guys, I heard so many times when I was younger about the, "Oh, it was just in the moment," or "I got caught up in the moment, blah blah blah," as a pass for certain, obviously actions being done. How many of you guys have heard that nonsense? "Oh, it's just the moment. Come on here," but if a guy would ever say something that he did something wrong and was caught up in the moment, how well do you think that would go over, right? But it's okay because you know she's a girl. I was also selfish and put myself in a situation where I knew I would lose control. If I'm not completely honest with myself and you, I wanted to lose control that night. I made a mistake, vowed to change my behavior, recommit, and never put myself in a situation like that again. It was a gargantuan lapse in judgment, and I'm 100% accountable for my behavior that night. Okay, I'll give her that. She's owning up to that. And notice when she was obviously, by the way, she was 22 years old, and what have I told you guys about getting married too young? Almost all these crazy stories, the number one common thing is they get married too young, early 20s, no experience, nothing, they're kids basically, and a lot of times, pretty much no other partners. Okay, I'm not saying you got to hook up with everybody in your city, but having a few partners is definitely not a bad idea to get a little experience in there, okay? Let me make that clear. Not the whole city, not the whole town where you come from, but just having some before you get hitched if you're going to get hitched, and it goes both ways. She says what really happened behind closed doors. My ex-husband had been stalking my Medium account for months before publishing my stripper story, and she said I wrote that about that too. You see, back 15 years ago, I confessed to my soon-to-be husband that I messed around with a stripper at my bachelorette party and we kissed, however. However, I did not give him the full details of my tongue in his mouth and his, you know what in mind. Long story short, an intense 2 a.m. conversation later, I confessed the entire narrative to my ex that night, after he pressed me for more details for one of my previous articles. So she did her dirty deed 15 years ago before the wedding. She confessed to him that she kissed the guy, but she didn't mention the other stuff, okay? And I guarantee that guy was probably like, tell me more, I want to know it all, tell me all the details. And there was probably crying going on and emotions and he's okay, I forgive you, and that's that. But obviously way more was going on, okay? And she married the guy anyway. She didn't tell him, so the whole time he thought that nothing else happened, or at least that's the story she told him. Not cool. So later on in life, and you're going to see her trying to sell how she's a great mom and loyal wife and all that, she obviously writes a lot of articles, and there's other things in there that caught him, that he's been obviously reading her writings and making him be questionable about certain things, which led to the conversation that she mentions, where she revealed what really happened, and obviously, the guy he flips out, as you can certainly understand. Music, she says, he was pissed, and rightfully so. But as the mother of his children and the woman who dedicated her entire existence to her family, I certainly did not deserve to be called a you-know-what sucking WHORE for a mistake I made 15 years ago, especially since the timing of it all, as you're about to find out, seemed a little too serendipitous to my husband's recently expressed wants and needs in our marriage. Yes, that happened 15 years ago, but here's the deal. She went and married him anyway without telling the truth, because she did confess, is what she's saying here, that she did kiss the guy, but didn't she say anything else about the other? Didn't talk about the sausage tasting, okay? And I guarantee you that if he heard that, I think he would have changed his mind or that, but he didn't know. And so now she's always 15 years ago, no big deal. And this guy, guarantee, is going to be thinking, okay, if she didn't tell me that, what other things are she not telling me? What other things happen that she's not telling me? Especially since she writes all these spicy, interesting articles for her Medium account, right? So you're going to see what he is interested once hearing this information. I was filled with unbelievable remorse and heaps of shame piled on top of that heaviness. I often wonder if I strive to be a good mom, such a good mom and wife, because of the extreme guilt I felt for what happened at my bachelorette party that night as a way to make up for it. I'm sure she let that go, and that is definitely a possibility. I felt obligated to roll around in those scummy emotions. I write publicly about it after that gruesome 2 a.m. conversation. Days later, I published I cheated on my husband a week before I got married, while I hung my head incredibly low for ruining my marriage. When I write, I don't want to do any more damage than I already have. It tells you how well I was doing mentally. So again, she wrote this whole thing confessing what happened. Meanwhile, there is no way that she probably doesn't have friends or maybe even family that knows that she does these writings, as you all know, guys. As you all know, those who've done relationships before, women can't keep secrets. Every woman has at least one friend that knows everything, all their dirty details. Okay, at least one, if not many. So guarantee that she has friends that know about this, obviously the ones that were there at the bachelorette party, but also when she wrote that article about this whole thing talking about it, okay? So therefore, not only he was obviously dishonored, so to speak, but the events that happened before the wedding and her lying about it. But now she's sharing the story with the world, and I guarantee you some friends know about it, okay? And again, she's the victim here, of course, she says. I was spinning tonight. I tell you unapologetically and without fear repercussions that I wrote this story after my ex-husband told me he wanted an open marriage. But wait, there's more. Well, you can't blame the guy for wanting obviously open marriage or something after hearing this information, right? She did what she did. She lied about to his face, kept it secret all these years, and who knows what other things are going on here. And if this guy wanted open marriage, perhaps there were other things that she's not mentioning here that have led him down the path to want an open marriage, okay? Because again, this story is being told by her from her point of view, so there could be other things you just don't know. He invited one of his girlfriends over for drinks to meet my kids for a potential threesome. I was somewhat the bee for not agreeing to his plan after 2 kids and 15 years of monogamous marriage. His reactions to my reckless interaction with the stripper threw me for a loop because 6 months prior, he had been trying very hard to convince me that an open marriage is what we needed to reconnect and take our relationship to the next level. So here we go. Making him out to be the bad guy. Well, maybe there were things that obviously going on that she's not mentioning that caused to really not trust her or have some issues with things. Certainly a possibility. At first, his polyamorous confession seemed heartfelt, and we've been together for a long time, people change, YOLO sort of thing. I of course had empathy for how transparent he was with me. But there was something about his presentation that didn't feel good in my heart of hearts. Maybe it was the back and forth between his proclamation of polyamory and monogamy. I believed after his seemingly heartfelt testimony that he was polyamorous, whereas the next day he would convince me beyond a reasonable doubt that he was monogamous and always have been, always will be, and love me and the family life more than life itself. Well, it's very likely that that was the case, that he obviously didn't cheat on her and all that stuff. But now again, we're going back 6 months before she told him what happened. He sensed a lot of things. He could see there were a lot of issues and plot holes in her stories, and who knows what that he wanted it. Maybe his controlling behavior, getting more nefarious as the days passed, was what sounded off the alarms of my gut, or how any hint of my autonomy sent him into a jealous rage. His tantrum is, listen how she's describing him. His tantrums, who's in the wrong here, who's the one that, come on here, but she's making him out to be the bad guy. And this long article, by the end, you can see how she's probably convinced some readers that he is the villain here. His tantrums went so far as to confront an unsuspecting longtime friend of ours to confirm that we were sleeping together while he was at work and I was home with our 2 kids all day long. That was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard, but to him it made sense that I was capable of such a wicked thing, wicked deceit, because I messed around with the stripper 15 years prior. So she's mad at the husband for asking or insinuating maybe she has something going on with the neighbor because obviously now knows what happened all those years ago and she's mad about it. Well, you know what, he has a reason to question such things because all these years she's been lying to him. She lied him into his face about the whole thing years before. What do you expect? Right, this was reversed. If this was a guy who did that deed and lied to his girl and got married to her and then confessed all those years later, are you telling me that your average woman wouldn't be wondering all these different things, wondering if he'd been hooking up with other people, the neighbor, whatever? Of course. But the man is being made, I would be the villain here. She goes on, what do you think was really going on? Projection. My ex-husband's guilty conscience was knowing a cheating-sized hole right before him. I wish I would have been completely honest with him that morning after my bachelorette party. If what he says is genuine and not manipulation at its absolute best, I could avoid divorce altogether. He said he would never married me in the first place. Had I been honest and given him a choice, aha, see, there you go. Not to toot my own horn here, but I think I'm sexy and my personality isn't half bad either. I've had my fair share of offers over my 20-year relationship with my ex. In a different world, I'd be a much different girl. A more free-spirited woman per se, but in this world I chose to get married at 22, bring 2 tiny humans into the world and to stay monogamous. I stay loyal because that's who I am, which brings me to my next point. So here we are, I'm sexy, I'm beautiful, I've had my share offers from guys. I have news for you. Any woman that is remotely decent looking, just okay, and she's obviously in her late 30s can still get guys. That's not hard, okay? Because guys are going to go for women as long as she's okay, she's like under 200 pounds, and she's, taken a shower in the last few days. Guys are going to hook up with her, okay? Let's be honest here. But I'm all for free, safe love, believe you me. But something about my ex-husband's approach just didn't sit right with me. Suffice to say that something indeed smelled fishy. He pushed and pushed for an open marriage where he had girlfriends lined up that he was cheating on me with already, she says here. I didn't sign up for that. I was threatened and given ultimatums. but I did not consent to the direction he wanted to take our marriage and the stipulations he added to our forever contract some 15 years later. He didn't care. Honestly, guys, when it's the point when it's somebody wants to open marriage, it's already over, unless you've got two people that both are completely 100% behind it just because that's who they are. And they're very, very sexual people. But other than that, if one person wants it, the other one doesn't, it's over. The guy should have ended with her right there to save himself a whole lot drama here, but he obviously was like, hey, after what I now know, after what you've told me, and obviously lying all these years, I would open a marriage, and she's freaking out about it. And how dare he and all that, come on here, lady. My opinion didn't matter, and he certainly didn't respect it. A toxic pattern I learned too late in the game. Here we go with the victim thing. The only thing he seemed to give two shits about was what I told him. No, he didn't like that. Especially for my partner of almost 20 years who bent over backwards to please him. Literally, yeah, him and the stripper. And probably other people. Monogamy, polyamory, threesomes, or celibacy. You boo, be honest with yourself and your partners. And don't continue to hurt people you swore you'd love forever. Well, she swore she'd love him forever, and look what happened. Oh, and don't dodge accountability. Be unwaveringly selfish, or try to rewrite the contract you signed many moons ago, and then try to convince your unsuspecting trusting spouse that it was their idea in the first place. Look how she's twisting this around to make him to be the bad guy here. I don't believe in monogamy or ethical non-monogamy for the matter. I believe in keeping my word and being honest with my intentions no matter how many people I'm committed to. On March the 19th, 2020, when my ex-husband got home from work, I didn't ask. I told him we need to talk in the garage where the kids couldn't hear us. Now listen to this. After years of placation, I stood up for myself. He didn't recognize this woman he saw standing in the garage before him who was finally telling him what she wanted. I want a divorce, I said, with a quiet rage and conviction. In the 20 years I spent loving my ex-husband, I never raised my voice at him in any way that I did that night, and I certainly never slammed one single door in his face. Looking back, I should have done it more often, so she wants a divorce. Now she, after all those years, confesses to what happened, that she lied to him the whole 9 yards with the stripper and all that, tasting a sausage, and Lord knows what else happened. And the guy is like, that's it. Hey, I want to open a relationship. I want to date other girls. And he's the bad guy here. She's a victim, and he's the bad guy. And she's standing up for herself. You got to be kidding me here. But you know what, guys? I've at this point, after doing these stories for a year, and then many things I've learned throughout my own life and other people know, I feel like nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing. She says, what did you expect me to do? Wait around at home with the kids to see if it works out for you and someone else, I roared. Ironically, slamming the garage door that night was a sign of the ultimate closure of our marriage. I had enough of this BS. I sat with this for a long time, 15 years to be exact. I got comfortable with the uncomfortable feeling that I messed up the night of my bachelorette party. I've taken accountability for it, and now I'm moving on. I'm forgiving myself for what happened that night and moving on with my life as that single, more free-spirited woman I've always wanted to be. It isn't just about what she did that night with the stripper. It's about obviously lying to the guy's face and lying all those years and letting him marry a woman he thought was somebody else. That's the main issue here, but she doesn't focus on that. She just thinks this little thing that happened for 15 seconds, 15 years ago. And I'm the victim here because he got upset and angry and called me a lot of things and obviously wanted to have an open marriage, and she's the victim and he's a bad guy. I've taken accountability for it and now I'm moving on. I'm forgiving myself for what happened that night and moving on with my life, blah, blah, blah. I forgive my ex-husband for how unkind he has been to me. I forgive him for the name-calling, gaslighting, manipulation, and blatant disrespect he thought I deserved. You gotta be kidding me. Let me just read that again because, I think some of this is going on in her part here. Name-calling, gaslighting, manipulation, and blatant disrespect. How do we know this guy wasn't a good husband to her all these years? But once he found out about this, he rightfully so lost his mind a little bit, right? Again, if the situation was reversed, what do you think she would have done, right? And this whole thing about I forgive my husband and blah, blah, let's just see how much he forgives him when the divorce lawyers meet. And there's discussions on splitting the assets, the house, child support, alimony, who the kids live with. Let's just see how much he wishes him well and forgives him then. And it'd be healthy for both of us to move on from this moment in time to heal. That's the thing, I've always seen this pain. I've always been able to hold a space for his wounds. That's what got me in this situation in the first place. I wish him nothing but love in his life, and peace in his soul forever and ever, yeah. Until they start dealing with the divorce. Let's see how much love in your heart you have for him and peace in his soul you wish for him then. And no, I didn't have to strip the stripper, I promise, sure. And final thoughts, 8 months ago, I didn't have the poise to make I can't even talk 8 months ago. I didn't have the poise to make a Friends reference while writing this piece. I'm in a much healthier place now. I asked myself if I was too cocky pun totally intended about cheating on my husband and proclaiming it to the world. I started to doubt my reality and thought maybe things would be easier to accept if I slept with the guy in the banana hammock. That thought led me to ending part 2 and discovering what I wanted to express in part 1, but wasn't emotionally intelligent to sift through it yet. My second time around, I say with confidence that my marriage didn't end because a strippers. At my bachelor party 15 years ago, my ex-husband, here we go, blaming the husband. My ex-husband's gaslighted me into thinking that to take the attention off his transgressions, it worked. It worked so well that I wrote this effing article about it, and that's disgusting. Thank you for your love and support. See, no accountability. It's not my fault. It's not my fault what I did all those years ago with a stripper. It's not my fault that I lied him in his face. It's not my fault that I kept it quiet all these years, but it's his fault. It's his fault. After 15 years of thinking that I was a different woman, he got mad at me, called me some names and said, you know what? I'm going to have an open marriage now, and you can understand his reaction here. No, he's the bad guy. It's all his fault, see? I'm talking about it's crazy. But guys, I'm sure many of you guys watching this have experienced one for another. You didn't do anything wrong, and then you react in a rightful way if you were cheated on or lied to or I know what, and then things are twisted around to make you the bad guy. It's crazy, but it happens in a real-life example here. So just be careful, gentlemen. Be careful who you date. Be careful you get into relationships with. And certainly be careful who you marry. And about the whole bachelorette party thing and those stereotypes, it does happen. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. You just got to be careful who you give your heart to and trust. You just never know. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below and let me know what you think about this story. Have you ever experienced something similar? And don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more Alpha Talk. I'll catch you next time.